Joining the show now from the brilliant Read-Optional, one of the great football thinkers, and he happens to be British as well. Obviously, that means I side with him more and more. The brilliant Ollie Connolly joins us now. Ollie, how are you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, good, man, good. We're just discussing how your background with the Beatles and everything looks like a stock image off of Google. Are you actually in that room, or is this like a green room secretly in your underground bunker?
I am in this room, a room where right before we started this, my overhead lights busted and I had to panic running around trying to find a way to light this. So this is a real, actual set piece in my home.
You look stunning, my friend. You look excellent. Look, we've got to start off with the big story of last week for you, as you became an NFL insider once more and broke the news to the world that Bill Belichick was making the stunning move of becoming a Tar Heel and taking over at UNC as their head coach. How did that whole process come about? How are you breaking this huge news to the world that, you know, Bill Belichick is making such a stunning move?
I mean, the idea of him going to college is something that his inner circle have been talking about for months now, almost a year. And I wrote a long piece about this, doing something I don't think you're supposed to do in the insider game, Will, which is basically just reveal your sources up front rather than just saying the source is usually just an agent. I came out and said, maybe not the name, but I specified where it came from. I was speaking to people who are on his staff in New England and guys who are going to be with him at North Carolina now months ago. And they raised this idea of going back to college, and they started really digging through not just the current college game with his son, Steven, who's been the Washington defensive coordinator, but going back through history to try and find the pitfalls of coaches who've gone from the NFL to college. Most importantly for Belichick is trying to find out what went wrong for Bill Walsh when he won 3 Super Bowls, took 3 years out of the game, retired effectively, went into the media, and then came back as kind of the NFL legendary coach to go and coach a college football back at Stanford, a place he'd been before. The difference with Belichick is it's the first ever guy to even win a playoff game to go and coach in college football without having never worked in college before. So it's a really unusual situation, but it's been something that's been on his mind for around 7-8 months.
There's been a lot of breakdown about this 400-page Bible about how the school are essentially bending over backwards and changing their whole, philosophy about how they approach things not even related to the sporting department to make sure the money's there and everything else. But your sense right now, what is success for Bill Belichick at UNC? What is this season and going forward over the next 3 years going to actually look like him being a college head coach?
Winning championships. Maybe not a national championship, probably a bridge too far, but winning the ACC. It's a school that hasn't won their conference for 40 years. And now they've got an unprecedented level of investment that will put them right at the top of the conference. And I made this point in the piece I wrote because one of his staff had told it to me that his boat is not called 333 wins. It's called 8 rings. That's what he cares about. So the idea of an NFL record and would he chase Schuler and what about Andy Reid coming from behind? We would probably pass him anyway if he went to a rebuilding situation in the NFL. The guy is in the business to win championships. He didn't walk in and say, I won a level of money you've never put into any of your sports. Your basketball team is one of the most famous on earth and you don't put that investment in there. He didn't ask for that stuff. He didn't ask for 30 staff members and a full new recruiting team and a level of commitment to facilities just to kind of have a passing in the night. I want to develop and grow young men and send them to the NFL and all the stuff he's talking about. That he's going to build this kind of football factory in Chapel Hill. He's there to win championships.
Ollie, this all sounds great, and it's great having you on this program. But when you say championships, and I hear ACC, and we're going to really talk college football here, those things don't go together. I mean, Dabo Swinney with Clemson, that happened, but this is a totally different environment. I've seen a lot of media say this since Belichick made this stunning decision. Does he really know what he is getting into? You can do the research. You can talk to people. This is a college football world driven by the SEC, driven by the Big Ten. It is a world with NIL and the transfer portal. This, to me, sounds like a multi-year rebuild for somebody who appears to be at the end of the career. I still don't understand why Bill Belichick makes this move if he thinks he can win championships. Is he going to be better than Georgia, than Oregon, than Texas? Those programs have been doing this for decades to get to this point. USC has been behind the 8 ball for decades. I don't understand how this works. Can you convince me otherwise?
Maybe not convince you otherwise. Look, I don't think he's going to win a national championship. I don't think he's going to run through Georgia and what is like a pseudo NFL franchise on a field on a Saturday. I don't think he's going to do that. But to get past Richmond, who's on the schedule, Bill Belichick can't coach circles around Dabo Swinney. You don't think so? think those are really complex offenses he can't figure out.
If he has the talent, he doesn't have the talent right now.
I mean, North Carolina's recruiting track record has been pretty solid. The early Mac Browns years, the last 2 years not been so good. But I think one thing that they took away when he went to see Steve in Washington, he was helping a lot with Steve Belichick in terms of preparing cut-ups and game planning during the season. He wasn't just like a proud father wandering around the facility. He was helping them out and learning what college football looks like. You can do it so quick now. If you go to the NFL, which it would still have been his preference, I believe, if you get onto a bad franchise, let's say you just bottom of the barrel, you got to take the Saints job. It's the only one available, the only one interested. That is going to be a 4 or 5 year step process to find a quarterback, to get out of salary cap hell. It takes forever to turn those things around if you don't get the right quarterback in the building. In college football, you can do it in 3 days. You can just go in the transfer portal, you can throw the money around, you can get a quarterback, you can start acquiring talent, and they may be terrible at it. They may be really bad at evaluating talent. They may be really bad at closing the deal and getting guys in the door. But if you can get a good enough level of talent to be second tier in the ACC and win 8-9 games, which has been their ceiling for the most part anyways, I do believe that Bill Belichick, with his tactical acumen, with his schematic knowledge, can find a way to maybe squeeze out one more to take them to 10 wins, which would have you not far off competing for an ACC title.
I also think that we are in a college landscape right now where expanded playoffs, the NIL coming in, we've seen so much realignment already over the last decade. You're not telling me North Carolina aren't looking at it a little bit and going, yeah, the action is the SEC, the action is the Big Ten. Those conferences very well could expand again in the next 5 years. If we've got Bill Belichick, if we're winning championships, if we're going to the playoffs as an ACC school, then we should be in that conversation. And I think that's the school's final aim, is to make themselves a power on that top level.
And I like that in a multi-year plan. What I still wonder about Bill Belichick, and a lot of people do, Ollie, is this his final destination? Let's say it does work out. Let's say that Bill Belichick takes North Carolina to a level it's never been before. Does he stay there, or is in the end, is he still trying to get back to the NFL? And it was as simple as nobody wanted to hire him anymore.
I don't think it's that nobody wanted to hire him necessarily. I don't think anyone wanted to hire him for the way he envisaged the job at 72 years old. He'll be 73 years old to start the next NFL season. If someone hired him in this cycle, he'd be the oldest coach in history. To try and walk into a building and say, I want all my staff with me. I want to control the secretaries and the nutritional staff and all the things he asks for when he goes into a building. Not a single franchise alive is going to do that for someone who may be there for 2 seasons. Then you got obviously all the back channeling stuff with Arthur Blank talking to the other owners and Robert Kraft, talking to all the other owners about how it went down the final years in New England. That I do think, the well was poisoned in the NFL, and this is the next option, which is why some people view it as desperate. But he's gone to a place where he can legitimately win and build a legacy. There is nothing in North Carolina football that cannot be completely overhauled in the Bill Belichick ideology and set the stage for what's next. And a key portion of the reason for doing this was, 1, to work with his son again, and 2, to give his son a chance to take over the program. If they win an ACC title in the next 2 years, he'll probably just step away and say, well, that was a pretty good job, and hand it off to his son then, when it's more likely that they'll be willing to acquiesce to a succession plan.
Look, let me pick your football brain while we've got you, Ollie. A couple of topics we've not got to in the show yet. One of them being the Buffalo Bills. 8 straight 30-point games. We've only seen that 4 or 5 times in the NFL before, but also back-to-back games where they're scoring and conceding 40 points. They're undoubtedly the most fun team in the NFL, but when you're watching Sean McDermott's side on Sunday night, and we're all enjoying how mad it is, but are you seeing a team that will be in New Orleans in February lifting a Lombardi?
Maybe not lifting the Lombardi, but I think they'll be there. I think they're quite clearly separating themselves at the top of the AFC. I think offensively they can win in any single way you want, right? That they are now this mauling, bruising, power run game. They can tap into Allen as a runner in high leverage spots or in really important games, which just makes them simply indefensible, which is why they're dropping 30 points every week. As you said, and they can drop 40 on good teams when they're allowed to use Allen as a runner when it makes sense to do that. And then defensively, I think the big concern there is every single team who wins a championship, you can go through all of history. What is the common theme beyond quarterback? Do they get home with a 4-man rush? And I just still don't know, in this world of all the blitzing we have, sim pressures, creepers, all the fun terminology, it still ultimately means you've got to get home with 4. You just cannot send 5 or 6 against the great QBs to get through the playoffs. And if you go through their their numbers, their pressure rates, their sack totals since week 8, it's really, really disastrously bad. They're worse than the Jags, the Colts. You just go down the line. The Patriots have a better pass rush since week 8 than they do, particularly with a 4-man rush. So that they just need to find some juice from somewhere, whether it's Von in the playoffs, whether it's Ed Oliver taking a leap that he's not done so far this season. That to me is the key. If they don't get pressure, their corners get exposed.
And what about the job Sean McDermott's doing? Because, you know, 8 of 8 on 4th down this season. There has been this kind of idea that he's finally clicked with the idea of being aggressive and not just taking the points. But there was that little wobble at the end of the first half where if the Rams had capitalised, if the Lions had capitalised at the end of the first half and gone and scored on that ensuing drive after the missed field goal, I think we'd be asking a lot of questions of Sean McDermott today. Has he done enough to convince you that if he has to go to Arrowhead, if he has to face those kind of superpowers of the NFC, that he will make those big key decisions? Are the tendencies there that he has actually changed who he is as a coach?
Arrowhead worries me. I think that could get into his brain. Everywhere else, I'm good with. If they come to him, I think he's fine. Him going into Arrowhead with the history of that stuff, I think could be a problem. I think he deserves tremendous credit because I think he was considered by the football commentariat fans as kind of Neanderthal-y, right? And kind of old school. And was he holding Josh Allen back? And I don't know whether he had like an ayahuasca trip or whatever happened, but he's completely radically overhauled what they do defensively. They become one of the most rotation disguise-based defenses in the NFL, something he's never done before. This is about 18 months ago. He woke up one day and said, I'm into the cool stuff now. Let's have it. So to make that kind of transformation as the guy who's run the same defense basically for 20 years, and then to have on the offensive side, the wherewithal to hire Joe Brady, to give him the full-time job in the offseason. And then, as you mentioned, this year, to kind of look around the league and go, you know, head coaches get an awful lot of credit for going for it on 4th down. They don't really get dinged that much when it doesn't work. All the smart people come out and say they're actually correct. Maybe we should start doing that. I have the best quarterback in the NFL. I have the best player in the league this season in Josh Allen. Maybe when the game's on the line, it should be in his hands and no one else's and not my defense. That to me is a really meaningful change to do both the stylistic stuff with his side of the ball and then the kind of head coaching CEO stuff that I think he was just bad at for a lot of his career. That to me means that, yeah, if there's a big 4th down in the playoffs, I do believe now, if we're not an Arrowhead, that he would do it.
Beautiful. Ollie Connolly, thank you so much for your time. Great man. Check out the wonderful work he does at the Read-Optional as well.